you're in a position where you can do something about it, I think. And it's almost like, why not? Because, my experience of growing up in a great place, Northeast England, pretty great place, pretty damp, pretty whatever. If you don't know anything different, then you stay there. But then you suddenly explore the world a bit and realize, actually, it's pretty cool to have a bit more blue in your life than gray. And that basically helps you. But isn't there even increasingly scientific evidence to suggest that additional sunlight has massive health benefits?
Oh, of course it does.
Not
vitamin D, energy, absolutely, all sorts. You're right. So I think we might be looking to get a bit more of that.
Do it. We're just talking about better living, folks. Adam Gordon back in Glasgow, probably the rainiest place in the UK, I would say. And having been a month and a half, maybe 6 weeks or something in Cornwall. So, great to see that some serious considerations are happening, because as we said, sometimes we allow inertia to keep us where we are, when in fact you can change your circumstances more readily than you might imagine. And
I'd go to Sydney. I'd go to Sydney like that. That's the one. That's top of my list by miles.
Really, wow, big move. I mean, there's a big career thing though in Sydney. It's like you can't quite do the same kind of work, seeing as it's the time zone is just untenable. But yeah, dude, I was in Sydney earlier this year. I was with Bass, actually. So I see Bass in the chat there. We were in Sydney for about maybe 2 weeks. Brilliant. I mean, amazing. The lifestyle is clearly better.
It is.
No worries. Anyway, folks, let us know in the chat whether you're happy where you're at. We're thinking about moving. Everyone's thinking about moving to different places. I think that's a classic summer thing to do, especially if you're in the UK and have returned to your home base. Anyway, we're back, everybody. It's Brainfood Live on Air, episode 168, bringing it to you every Friday, no fail. We have got a fantastic show for you today because it is one that is really close to my heart. As a student anthropologist, I'm also always been very interested in how people operate as a group and how you change their operations if you feel as a leader they're not operating in the way in which they should. So in other words, how do you execute cultural change within a team that you've inherited, or you can see there's some drift in that organization? What do you do as a leader to change that? And we've got some leaders coming in who have direct experience of doing this. And Adam, I totally include yourself in this also with your experience. This would be wonderful to exchange. What are the things that you can and should do to make that change? Anyway, talking about culture, we have to firstly thank our sponsors for this show, as we always do. One of the few organizations that had paddled into the waters of cultural assessment, cultural analysis, was our friends at Platypus, platypus.io. Make sure you check them out. They are a business that is all about trying to quantify team fit. How do you figure out whether a certain person's natural sort of traits and behaviors are going to chime with the other people in their team? That is something I think very few organizations are exploring. Platypus.io are one of those businesses that do explore that. So make sure you check those folks out. We are continuing the LinkedIn experiment, folks. I hope you're watching this on the company page on Recruiting Brainfood on LinkedIn, because we're no longer pumping this through my personal account. So that is a big channel, 47,000 or so followers on that channel. Big decision to switch that to a much smaller Recruiting Brainfood follow account. There's only 7,000 people following on the page there. I want you to tell me whether you can actually see this, because it's obviously, I don't know how I feel about making this shift, because I'm not comfortable right now to say whether it's a good or bad idea. You let me know in the comments below. Quick sound check, folks. Can you hear me, everybody, on Crowdcast, on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook? If you can, please do give me a quick comment on the chat. Important for me to know that I'm not screwing up the audio before we continue much further. We do actually have quite a popular podcast. People don't realize this, but the audio for this goes into the podcast, and it's actually now about 120,000 downloads. I don't know whether that's good or bad number, but it's a lot of downloads, right? It sounds like, wow, there's a lot of people have actually listened to this thing, which is fantastic, considering it is just a audio file from our conversations. So shout out to all of our podcast listeners who no doubt will be listening in at different times from the broadcast hour. Anyway, thank you everyone who's saying they can hear me okay. Let's welcome back Adam Gordon. Adam, great to see you again in your home HQ. We won't talk too much about how wonderful the time was. I'm sure Glasgow will treat you very well as well. How have you been in the last week since we last spoke?
Great. Lots of exciting things happening professionally, and I am enjoying being back to normality.
No. He's depressed and in mourning. We can see it in your eyes, mate.
I'm trying to get out of that by reading the Brainfood.
Yes, indeed. So what did you read last week? Was it interesting? And pick us out a few things that you want to quickly discuss.
Yeah, the first one I thought it's not really Brainfood. It was commentary from you on Brainfood jobs.
Yes.
Which is that the RPOs have stopped posting on Brainfood jobs, which I thought was very interesting. I wanted to ask you about your theory that it was to do with the collapse of the scale-up market, which I couldn't quite see the link, but it'd be great to find out what you meant by that, and then maybe I'll tell you why I think it might be.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Very happy to discuss this. And in fact, we're going to have a talk on this. We're going to do a Brainfood Live in a couple of weeks specifically on this topic, which is what is happening to the contradiction between what we see, which is high profile tech layoffs, a lot of negative coverage with regards to high inflation and cutting growth and all this, yet at the same time, continual pressure to recruit candidates. There's candidate shortage is still an issue. So what I'm seeing in sort of not only on the job board, but just through conversations with some of these businesses, is that essentially a lot of them have built their growth on the growth of VC-backed scale-ups. So in other words, if you look at the RPO sub-market that's grown in the UK, all of them have kind of accelerated through jockeying on the back of companies that are suddenly raising, 500 million, need to recruit 1,000 developers or whatever. They couldn't do it sort of with their own recruitment, so they brought in the RPO market to help do that. So those companies have all grown up because they're all kind of feeding off the same VC-backed sort of investment. Now, with VCs being much more parsimonious and much more conservative with their investments and cutting back on their investments, and you're starting to see a lot of these high growth companies start being a lot more defensive in their growth plans. And that has a downstream effect on the RPO market, which now need to pivot to different areas that continue to grow. So that's my theory on this.
So you're talking about what companies like Seed and Joint Talent and Troika, presumably, rather than companies like People Scout and CLO and AMS? They're Fortune 500, FTSE 100 customers. They're not really working with those VC-backed type.
That's right. Yeah. So there's a subcategory of tech RPOs, I call them. So these are RPOs that are focused very much on the scale-up market. And it's actually been one of the best things that we've seen in recruitment, I think, over the past couple of years, the emergence of this type of company. Because we've seen some great recruitment going on and some great sort of great teams and businesses being built. However, they're obviously dependent on this continual investment of VC money. And without that sort of being there, those companies are going to have to pivot to different places that continue to have demand for recruiting. And that probably means butting heads with some of these big enterprise players, to be honest.
So were you getting from the big traditional RPOs, like the resource solutions and the Manpowers and the People Scouts and companies like that, are you getting still the same number of jobs from them?
Interestingly, no. I mean, Cielo do have an account with us, but they haven't posted anything recently. And I think AMS have an account with us as well. But yeah, basically I would imagine that the mini RPOs, if you want to call it that way, you know, the ones that focus on tech, they're the ones that basically have been more conspicuously growing, simply because they're growing from a smaller start and they're growing really fast and doing really well. They're the ones that now need to think, okay, where do we need to focus our efforts, because you can't lean on the VC money too much anymore. And that's, we've seen that the agility, if you like, of those companies, those newer companies, is going to be tested because of this up and down period that everyone's had. These last 18 months have been particularly crazy for us. But I think the advantage these smaller companies have is that they are even more agile than traditional RPOs are. So I'm sure they're going to do very well, even if they have to regroup. By the way, Ben, thank you very much. LinkedIn stream is not working, so there's a busted experiment. By the way, Ben, can you just check whether that's not on my personal page, but on the company page? Is anybody seeing this? I don't know. Somebody's watching it. I don't know. Okay, let's keep going. Give us another thing, mate.
Yeah, now that you explained that, I understand that. With those companies that are focused on like the much bigger RPO solutions, like with tens and 20s and 50s of recruiters, I think that some of them may be in a similar position because so many large companies are in a hiring freeze right now. And of course, in certain industries, a lot of redundancies happening as well right now. So
that's right. Yeah.
Okay. The 7 Habits of Bad Interviewers.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes, really good.
So the 7 habits are number 1, acting like you're smarter than the person you're interviewing. Number 2, focusing on the exact answer they give rather than other context around that. Number 3, not giving them hints. So asking a cryptic question and not giving a bit more context about it or what type of thing you're looking for. Poor planning. Oh, how many hiring managers turn up for an interview that they haven't even bothered, looking at the person's CV? Another one was ignoring the person's CV. Another one was like taking too long. I think they used the term overstretching, but I think it meant like taking too long between interviews, too many interviews and steps and processes. And then the last one was poor group dynamics. So that was, poor feedback loops, lack of collaboration between hiring manager 1, hiring manager 2, recruiter, technical assessor, whatever it might be. So, I liked that. I thought it was interesting. As you know, assessment's not my main area of strength, but I certainly found that quite accessible. And I think any recruiter who's here needs to go and read that and take a look at, are we doing this or are we not doing it? If we're doing these things, let's work out how we can, try and change it and maybe put out some guidelines for hiring managers.
Yeah, I mean, I particularly like this post. I always like the posts that basically are non-specialist people that are talking about recruitment. And this is just a guy who's a developer, I think, who's obviously been interviewing and I have interviewed. And he's taken time to just sort of pause on that, reflect on it, and write this post on it. And I just think it just hit true. Every point just hit true, particularly about this idea of, understanding the purpose of the interview and avoiding this sense of trying to, maybe establish dominance. Like sometimes you can see this when, two people might have a conversation and, the interview is trying to be the dominant person against the person who's actually applying for the job. And you think, everyone's born witness to this type of behavior. And you think, that's just, some really unprofessional behavior that really needs to be corrected. So yeah, really important post, something I think you should share with not only people starting in their career in any kind of recruiting that type of function, but as a refresher to anybody who's involved in recruiting, because I think we all end up falling into some of these habits, whether we know that they're bad or not. So do check that out. Just share the link. Okay, we should be on link. We should be back on LinkedIn, by the way. I've just fixed something, I think, on the fly, but yeah, let me know if that's all good. Okay, go ahead, Adam.
I think it was from landing.jobs. the tech talent trends.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
For anybody that's
indeed.
in tech, for anybody that's in tech recruitment, this is gold dust for how you can plan who you're trying to hire, and tips around diversity, and there's vast amounts of data and information in here. This is essential reading for anybody that is in tech hiring. So a few of the trends that stood out to me, or a few of the stats that stood out to me: only 14.4% of tech workers are freelance. I thought it was something like 50%. I thought it was a much higher number than that. So that was really eye-opening to me. Almost everybody is an employee, whether it's permanent or free or temporary. So I'm really surprised that so many people are freelance. 17% still are female or non-binary. Am I surprised it's so low still?
No, that's progress, mate. I think that what you got to look at with these types of stats is not like what the ratio is now, but the progress over time. And I think they've done this report before. But if you look at it, the progress is always going in the right direction. So as slow as it might be, we're trending in the right space. So it's almost like you track it over time. And there's more and more non-male people doing software development, I think. So yeah, obviously long way to go, but I don't think we can't be demoralized at the numbers at this point, because it takes time to get into this field. Yeah.
A couple of others. A very, very small number, 4.2% were either self-taught or through a boot camp. Mm-hmm. Almost everybody else has had some kind of more traditional training. So I was very, very surprised that was so low as well. 31% have got some sort of management responsibility. 52% are full stack engineers. JavaScript's the most popular language. And then two final ones that again really stood out. So nearly 90%, 89% of people were either full or partially hybrid. So hardly anybody is just going into an office, to work the whole time in tech. I think that means it's only 11% of people in tech jobs are actually working in an office full time. And then, does
that make sense to you folks? Just in your own businesses, are you seeing that in particular tech individuals, software developers, software architects, people who are actually building software? Are they basically? It's very conspicuous that they're not in the office all the time. And I think that's definitely going to be an ongoing pattern, because the office is probably the worst environment for someone who needs to dive into like deep work. Oftentimes you can't be doing all this interaction stuff because it takes you out of the zone. You've got to be in it. The office may be the worst type of environment for software development, in which case, no surprise that a very large percentage are majority flexi, if not like full remote,
Yeah. And then the final stat which really stood out about that was that only 17% appear to be working across borders. They're working in international, teams and international environments, which is presumably because so many of them are working for smaller organizations, startup, scale-up organizations, who are more likely working within the one country. So I was surprised that was only 17%, but, not arguing with stats.
That may well be a legitimate future for a lot of remote, it's kind of remote in country rather than remote anywhere, because you want to be, firstly, obviously in the same time zone. Most countries are in the same time zone, apart from mega size countries. And you want to be under the same legislative rules. That's not only true for data protection, national security, all those types of issues that are prevalent, but also taxation. It simplifies the taxation code. You understand a lot more about how things operate. It's probably going to be the predominant pattern. So yeah, very, very interesting. And it's a very internationalized sample, by the way, folks. I mean, I know a lot of the reports that I share I share what I can from different places, but they're predominantly from US, UK, even Europe focused. But the stuff that landing jobs have put out there, it covers like globally. There's a lot of Latin America, there's a lot of African sort of people who've contributed there as well. So well worth the read if you're interested in, what is happening at a global scale. Yeah.
One more?
Yeah, quickly.
Newsletter opens. As you know, I'm not particularly big or I don't particularly know an awful lot about assessment, but what I do know a bit about is writing and communication. And this is the area which I'm most excited about in recruitment. And so I enjoyed the inclusion of your tips for newsletters. Thank you. You've already preempted what I'm going to talk about. The TLDR on this one is it's all about the subject heading. I think we've had a few articles in Brainfood recently which were, the subject heading is going to get you better open rates. The people who wrote this blog, they get 30% open rates for theirs, which is pretty good. But some of the tips that I really enjoyed were include trending topics. Absolutely. Go onto Twitter and see what people are like, what are the trending topics on Twitter? Because that when you get it and you go, oh, that's about this, you probably haven't looked at it yet because it's trending, but they might be the first people that are going to teach you, and you think, yeah, I'm going to open this to hopefully get a summary of what this is all about. Yeah, cool way of getting people opening it. Avoid long subject lines. Absolutely. I think that's really important as well. Use shorter words to say the same thing. Again, if you're on Twitter, then you're probably already used to doing this. Include an emotional hook. Like, you're gonna really love this, or you're gonna be more successful if you open this. I always say this. Take a look at this; it'll make you more popular. People click it; it'll make you more popular with your peers. You
gotta basically lean on. Again, we go back to us being shaven monkeys, folks. That's all we are. Human beings are literally biological entities that are subject to the rules of evolution, and we just got to understand what that is. If you give people an opportunity to increase their status or increase their capability, their competence in general, their status, if you can somehow put that into the subject, that's going to help that person. You're going to help sort of get an open rate on there.
What's in it for them? Knowing your audience was another one of the tips. What's in it for them? What is going to benefit them by clicking here? Even if you've only given them 4 words to try and get them to do it. I follow a boxing channel on YouTube called IFL TV, and they use the same words on their video descriptions all the time. One of them is brutally honest. They always say, Tyson Fury, brutally honest in this video. People click on it. The brutal truth about such and such. People click on it because they use these words. Yes, Ben, it is literally clickbait. 100%.
Yes, it is. There's no doubt. And this is where there is a conundrum, because we don't want to be contributing to the clickbait world. At the same time, we have an efficacy problem, because if we have a message to send, it's like we want that to happen. We want people to read it. And who is to judge what is quality content or not? It's very hard for that to kind of figure out. Oh my God, Coogan has been referred here. Can't believe it. Never thought that would ever happen on Brainfood Live. Coogan Cassius. Yeah.
But the thing is though, absolutely, Ben's right. Is that not just literally clickbait? It is, but you've got a job when you are producing that subject heading. You've got a job, and that job is to get people to open that. When they open your message, you need further clickbait to get them to keep clicking. And that clickbait isn't just like empty. It needs to be useful, relevant content. But absolutely, use the sensational headings to get people to do what you want them to do. That clicks.
By the way, the abuse of this, just to defend Ben a little bit, the abuse of this, in other words, people who are very, very good at creating headlines that get opens, but then disappointing with the value in the end, because that happens a lot, right? the solution is something like Brainfood. That's basically why recruiting Brainfood started back in the day, 5-6 years ago, because I was pissed off at the amount of clickbait that was out there. I was seduced by some of these opening lines, and I was like, oh my God, not again. And I just thought, look, you felt like a fool because you were tricked. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do is create a curated newsletter and just guarantee the quality myself. And that way you can open everything, and you might disagree with it, but it's not going to be crap, I guarantee you, because I've gone through it.
The opposite is, and I can't remember what it's called, but they're a mega business. They're a huge business now, and what they do is they produce sensational headlines. Like you'll cry when you see where Dustin Hoffman lives today, and Olivia Newton-John's granddaughter is the most beautiful woman alive, or stuff like that. And you never click on that. You never click on that because you clicked on it before, and it's like, it's just crap behind that.
Yeah, we can do another conversation on our ethical responsibilities for creating trust in the wider information universe, because I agree at a practical level, doing our jobs, we probably need to do more click stuff. But at a wider level, what's our ethical responsibility? So, Ben, I think we might have to get you on the show and talk about that. Anyway, let's get on with the show today, which is about cultural change for TA. How do you change your culture? Let's bring on our guests. I'm definitely going to ask you about this as well, Adam. So get ready for this. Okay, let's bring on Rassam. Debut for him here. I think John Hull was here as well. Is that Jonathan Hull? It is, I guess. Yeah. Nims is here as well. Nims is actually an expert on this. So let's make sure she's here. Okay, there's Rassam. How are you doing, mate? Great to see you. Rassam, for the folks who don't know you, can you quickly introduce yourself, who you are, what it is you do?
Sure. Thank you very much. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Hung. Well, I'm Rassam. Hey everyone. So I'm from Paris, currently in sunny Paris. I work in recruitment for 15-20 years. I've been working at Doctorlib, which is a French scale-up for the past 5 years now. I'm doing a transfer myself and starting a new job in September in a couple of weeks, by the way. So yeah, very happy to be joining you all.
Exciting stuff. Well, congratulations on the new job, first of all, Rassam. John, let's introduce you. I think you've been on the show before, but let's introduce yourself to the audience. Who are you? What it is you do?
Hi, I'm John Hull. I work for Balfour Beatty, which is a UK construction business. We've got about 11,000 people in the UK and about 20,000 globally. And previous to that, I've worked across many sectors, and change is really important, especially in larger businesses, right?
Well, I think it's the reason why people at your level get a job is in order to affect cultural change, right? So, I mean, why would that vacancy even be there? So this is part of the reason why I was very keen to get you on. And Nims, great to see you again. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yep,
perfect. Okay, so hi everybody, I'm Nims. Lovely to be here again. Talking about culture. I work in the Ministry of Defence, and I look at the organisation design and development. So essentially structure of an organisation and then the dynamics of an organisation, which I think both matter regardless of what kind of scale you're looking at.
Okay, fantastic stuff. Guys, let's kick off with the first big question is, you're a leader of a business or a department. How do you know that cultural change is required? Do you feel it in your what? Is it something like it's just osmotically you feel this? Or is there some sort of evidence, or is there some sort of way in which you could tell that this is a situation that needs to have some sort of cultural change? Adam, you stuck your hand up first, so let's go with you.
People are unhappy and the organization's underperforming. Either of those two things or both of those things.
Right. So let's deal with them separately. Firstly, people are unhappy. So is that obvious? I mean, how do you know as a manager that that's the case? How do you surface up the emotional vibe, if you like, of the team? Any thoughts on this?
I think there's a disconnect, Hung, between the numbers, often the data, if there is any, and the anecdotal feedback. So on the surface, say in a big recruiting team, you could have, well, we're filling roles, right, or what at scale or not, but the feedback from the stakeholders, both recruiters and the business, will be different, won't reflect that so-called success.
Right, that's an interesting angle. So there's the disconnect between two types of information you might collect. The quantitative data, which is, stuff that we kind of think is really cool and more important these days, but also the qualitative data. If they don't match, then that's a sign. So where the one is more positive, the other's negative. Like you might have ostensibly a very happy team, but there's like very poor data. Okay, there's a problem. Or on the other side, you might have like the extraordinarily performance data going through the roof, but everyone's like really annoyed. Then again, there's an issue that needs to be thought about. I think we've lost Rassam there, but never mind. Let's see if we can come back. Nims, any thoughts on how do we know there is a problem?
You ask. I think it's, we always kind of go to a point of assuming or thinking about it ourselves, looking at the data. Why don't we ever ask, the team, what is it like? And bring that into our awareness. I think for me, I know when things are wrong, when we can't execute some of our basic tasks, when we get stuck in some of the really basic things of how we do stuff, then I know that there is an issue with how the team is, because if you can't execute something and it's becoming harder than it is, then there's a real problem.
Yeah, very interesting. So we've got execution, we've got sentiment. Rassam, have you got any thoughts to add to this? Like, how do we know that that there is a cultural change issue that's required?
Yeah, so I agree with everything that has been said. Obviously, turnover as the ultimate kind of KPI can be one of them, but I think that in TA, lack of alignment on. So this is very specific to tools, but like tools times really behind tools usage, lack of alignment of how we use the tool within a team. You can uncover some stronger problems in a team that it's more around the values and the culture itself, and maybe we can talk about it. But and let me give you an example. If a team has strong values and beliefs behind diversity or candidate experience, but don't use after that statement some of the tools that help to that, that undercovers maybe some communication problems and also linked to trust and happiness of the team. From my experience, that was some stuff that I perceived.
Yeah, so there's another sort of analogous sort of angle to the thing that John mentioned, which is a disconnect between, let's say, stated commitments and then reveal behaviors, if you like. So there may be, we think this is the truth, and then there's an action that needs to happen as a result of that commitment, but those actions are not performed for whatever reason. We can perceive that that's going to be some sort of issue. It's really interesting to know, because I wonder how many times is it even possible to manage a team and not know there's a cultural problem? And I guess you might end up. It seems to me you should know, right? I mean, is that you get it?
I mean, like a lot of people some people have got very strong emotional intelligence, and other people have got very limited emotional intelligence. And if you're limited in it, which is no fault of your own necessarily, then you may miss it. And that's why, as I think Nims said, you got to ask people, and you got to ask them in a couple of different ways. You got to use the qualitative and quantitative.
Yeah. And maybe here's where sorry, John, go ahead.
No, I think to build on that, it's they're going to be unhappy. I always do a quick dive in the first couple of weeks. If you're taking TA, are they able to execute the jobs that they've been hired to do? So are they bogged down with other stuff that's built up over time, whether it's admin or other requests, but isn't really part of what they've signed up to, which is a big disconnect. And is the leadership or management enabling them to do that? So are they compounding the issue, or are we getting stuff out of their way?
Yeah, performance I think is important because it's hard to be enthusiastic or high morale if there's a persistent failure to deliver on objectives, right? No one wants to be failing against those targets.
Yeah.
So I think that's very corrosive to your morale if you do that. Anybody who goes to the gym or has gone to a gym would know this, right? If you set yourself a ridiculous target, you don't hit it, your morale actually erodes even further. What kind of questions do you ask in order to test the sentiment of the team? Because it strikes me that you can't just go there and say, "Oh, are you happy?" Because they may feel, they may feel intimidated by you. They may feel like they need to say that they are. Do you have any experience of like good questions to ask to try and understand whether the person is actually happy in job and in team? Adam, go ahead.
Well, I mean, you should be able to ask your team if they're happy, but if you don't feel like you can, maybe you need to work on your management style.
No, I'm not saying you. I'm not saying you
cannot
can't
check them. If you don't want to ask that, you pulse check them, yes or no. Start of every morning, 8:30 a.m. comes up on their screen, or 9 a.m. comes up on their screen. Are you happy? Yes or no? Yes and no. You measure the energy of the organization by pulse checking teams. That's something that a lot of startup and scale-up companies do, and I think it's a great way of doing it.
No, I think
a daily pulse check.
No, but asking that binary is I don't think adequate, because a lot of people are going to be yesing against that, even if they may not be particularly feeling that way. Go ahead, John.
We always ask what's prevents you from doing the best job you can, right? Because, well, I think in any department, it's not just recruitment. People say more resource, right? And of course, that may or may not be achievable or possible. And often it isn't the resource that's the issue. It's where the resources are and where you're dedicating them to. So what is getting in the way of, let's say it's a recruiter, of them doing the best job or filling the mandate of roles that they've got or whatever it is, you soon, you'll get some sort of platitudes, but generally if you keep digging, you'll get to one, and you ask enough people, you'll get to themes that are affecting it.
So I've got two perspectives.
Go ahead.
So I think one of the themes that I noticed in this conversation is the level of incongruence that we relate to culture, the gap between what people say and what people do. I think your question about are people happy, and if you're going to tell your manager that there's an influence of power, which is what you're referring to, Hung, about, am I going to be told what I want to hear, or am I going to hear the truth? And, I think that depends on lots of things in an organization. In terms of how I would ask, what questions I would ask, I would ask kind of an open question about what's your experience of working here or in this team. And I think we shouldn't equate good culture to happy. I think that's a bit of a misnomer. So we need to be really careful around like what is it we believe about being happy in an organization. What are some of the other factors that contribute to our happiness that could be impacting us while in role that's outside of our role? People could be miserable for all sorts of reasons.
Can we just explore that a little bit? Because you're absolutely right. When you just said that comment, my vision David Brent just appeared in my mind, like very prominently, because he was a manager that was obsessed with happiness, wasn't he? Obsessed with everyone being him being popular, everyone being happy. Clearly running a dysfunctional department, running it into the ground, and no one was actually happy. So how do we understand? How do we unpack this? I inherit a team. Everyone seems happy. Like how do we know that's not actually a good thing?
I don't think it's about knowing it's a good thing. It's about what is our belief around that perspective that they're happy, and do we genuinely think that, or are they fronting? Because sometimes that happens. I hate to say it, especially when someone new comes on board. We want to show them that this is a functioning team. We want, we put on our best, put our best foot forward, like we do in interviews. Okay. So is that really kind of a good way of looking at it? But I think sometimes what I do is just I simply observe, what is it that I notice? And I'm very instinctive. So I use my intuition a lot. And then I kind of ask questions. So I do inquiry, and then I look at different sources of information, and then, ask people generally. And that's kind of part of the information that I gather.
Yeah, and we've got to reconnect it ultimately with performance, I guess. I mean, that's one of the key things, right? So you go back to that. Rassam, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was about to say that. I mean, first of all, happiness is can be a very broad kind of sensation, especially when it comes to work. If you put it in the workplace, like being happy in the workplace is something that maybe I, as a leader, as a manager, can have an effect on for a team member, whereas he can be like sad or unhappy in his life as a whole. And there I have my own limits there. So I'd say as a leader or a manager, my role is to understand and define with my team player, like where are the moments and the spheres where we can both work together on the work, sometimes maybe on personal stuff, but mostly on work. And then when it comes to TA, like we all know, there's not millions of stuff. There's some personalities that want more impact versus numbers. Some want money versus like identifying their kind of drivers and consistently working on it every one-on-ones. Like, okay, well, we said that this was important for you. Like, what happened since last week or last month or last quarter? How are we, not happy, but how are we, growing on these levers together? Has been helpful.
Yeah, I think that leads into being able to track this a little bit as well. I think going back to your first point as well, Adam, the idea of having some consistent way of measuring people's feeling is useful, because you can't just rely on your memory, or you can't just rely on, that it used to be this way. There's got to be a measurement way of doing this. Okay, let's move on to doing something about cultural issues. I think that the best way to change a culture is to get rid of people and get new people. Is that the most efficient way to change culture, folks? Simply swap the people out. There's 10 people in my team, 3 people are malcontents. See you later. Get rid of those people, get 3 other people in, boom, change the culture. Is that not more efficient than any other method of cultural change? Thoughts on this? Let's keep with you, Rassam. Have you ever done this?
No, I haven't fired the whole team to change the culture. I'd say that the 2 main experiences of culture, because the one I've been experiencing in the past 5 years is hyper growth and scaling, which is very different of other experiences I had before, or even the others that I will have in the future. Because in the scale up and hyper growth, there's a kind of energy and alignment, natural alignment of everyone through some core values of the company already set in, and there's mostly good news in the company. So it's very different than. But in one of the companies when I arrived, it was exactly something where there was some old school kind of mindsets around TA, lack of knowledge, lack of expertise. Some people with a higher willingness than others to want to do that. From my experience, I think, yes, you need at least a core kind of set of either people, mindset, or expertise. So that sometimes requires maybe to fire someone and hire someone else, or just add someone in that. But mostly, if you talk about a culture of a company as a whole, TA, or even within a TA, one team only represents, let's say, a certain ratio. If you want to have a consistent and impact on a whole company, you can't just replace teams, 100% teams. So
right, good answer, Rassam. So what you're saying is replacing people can work, but at a localized level, because
and especially what do you bring, like, because I think that a lot of people are mostly positive and want to change for good, and you can have an impact. But if you want to, you say that you really can't work on an individual, yes, maybe at that person, and then you have to say, okay, but what is the impact of, and where am I going to bring something new, and what is going to, and often it's maybe an expertise in that case to just gain a bit of time on the momentum of a team.
Yeah, very interesting. Nims, I want to go to you on this, because you're working for public sector, government organizations. Typically, they're less trigger happy, so to speak, in terms of getting rid of people. Oftentimes, there's more protections. But is there a scenario where actually moving someone away from the situation is better for everybody? And how do you know that?
Well, I've seen it happen where one person has been removed from the team and it's changed the dynamics of the entire team. So it does happen. I think it's efficient. That your word efficient is good. Is it effective? I think there's a question mark I've got around the level of effectiveness from a long-term perspective, because I think some of those dynamics still remain. And also we need to remember that as a leader in talent acquisition, you have a disproportionate impact on the culture. So your part of what you own will still remain. So what are you changing out, and what is it that you own?
Yeah, and also who you bring in. I think back to
And
Rassam's
who you
point,
bring
right?
in. Yeah.
You got rid of someone who you understood to be a negative person. Okay, how does that work? John, what are your thoughts? Would you sit there and turn this person around, or when do you pull the trigger?
Too binary, right? But I think it's about clarity and leadership and vision, right? So if it's all well and good, you can say someone's not performing or they're toxic, but what are your expectations of the team? So you got to state that out at the beginning. And I sort of agree, you can take out one or two individuals over time that does make a difference, partly from it's a statement. Often, if it's been known that one individual or a group are toxic, it's important to lever them out rather than people who are just perceived to be underperforming because they might not be in the right role. So your structure might not fit the service you're trying to deliver. All of that needs analysis, but you need to manage those expectations or set the expectations of what's acceptable. And it's more about behavior and intent than it is about capability often.
Yeah, good point. It's not a performance driven per se. Are there behaviors contributing to a negative culture, which ultimately leads to negative team performance? I think we've all seen that. Again, I'm just thinking like football analogies here, where you've got certain players on the team that they're demotivated. They want out, and then suddenly that creates a culture within the business. Like they start taking liberties in training, and that if you don't police that, then suddenly your culture starts sliding away. Then maybe you need to start thinking about moving those people on as the most efficient way to do it, rather than spend too much time trying to turn them around. Even though turnaround, I guess, is a responsibility of leadership. You can't just like go in there immediately get rid. You've got to give people a chance to turn it around, right?
But I think
it's dignity of choice. If they know what the expectation is, they can either choose and leave, but they're not. It's not a surprise if those conversations start, if that behavior or whatever hasn't changed.
What is the technique then, everybody, in terms of like you don't have an objective to necessarily cycle people in or out of the organization, but you think that might happen because some people might not then adapt to the new way that you want to work. What are the steps of how do I communicate my project to the team in this case? Is there like certain things that I should be doing in order to make sure that everyone at least respects the journey and the decision making that we're going to undergo?
I think it's about, it depends on your context, doesn't it? In terms of what's the burning platform, or is it hyper growth? Are you in a difficult cost situation? Is it a bit of both? But you've got to set out why the change is needed, right? So what are you aiming for? So just carrying along the same way won't get the different result that you may or may not be after. And then just communicate that relentlessly, because over time, and regularly with the right audiences, whoever they may be, ideally the whole team, but that may not be possible all the time.
Okay, stop press. That's actually a really good first point to note down. The first point would be like track what the current trajectory is in terms of performance outputs and all the rest of it, and then say we need to be here. This is the job. This is the new task, and then make sure everyone is aware of this new thing. That's very explicit, and then repetition of the objective over and over, so that everyone just is more aware that this is not something that is episodic, but a persistent target we all have to reach, and therefore some adjustment behavior-wise is required. Okay, very good. What else should I be doing if I wanted to make a change for this this team, apart from long-term objective and repetition?
I'd ask the team to co-create what that plan looks like, because if it's going to be your plan, you're going to be sailing alone if no one else is on the bus. And I think one of the issues is that I find that way that is maybe a bit oppressive, and I like autonomy and I like contributing. So I'm like, if this is the target, the new target, what are we all going to do to get there? So everyone takes ownership and responsibility for their role, which I think is important. And then they know, and then there's no moving kind of back, because, you know, they've done that and they've contributed and they've agreed. So for me, it's about individual commitments, individual responsibilities, collective planning, co-creating in order to move that forward to be successful.
Yeah, really like it. So this is about getting the consensus, so everyone else is committed. It's a classic change management, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get everyone agreed as early as you can, rather than just dropping the plan in. I think the leader needs to set the objective, but how to get there. Okay, team. Talk to the team about how they can contribute to get us there. And then once they're all signed up on the document, we can crack through. And in fact, modern collaborative software helps us do this, doesn't it? You know, you could set up some shared document. Hey, folks, everyone contribute your ideas here. You've got a week to put your thoughts in, yada yada yada. But then after a certain point, we're gonna lock the commitments and say this is what we're gonna shoot for at least the next period of time. And then everyone is kind of has already been pre-committed, if you like, to doing this. Okay, Adam, I feel you want to say something. No? Okay, that's fine. Rassam, I've lost the video on you, but so I'm guessing you might want to say something. Do you have any thoughts again on how do we kind of impress upon the team that, okay, here's the behavioral change we need to make to hit this new objective? I think we might have lost Rassam. Okay.
I hope you still hear me and see me.
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, right. Sorry, I don't know if you can still hear. Okay, all right. Just adding a word on again, my experience is that a lot of time on the time lapse of culture change or new project, you come in as a leader, you sit with the team, you do a workshop. Everyone, brings their own ideas. You have a set of values or some next actions, and then you start doing the actions. And then the third part, which is the most important for me, is the accountability part for a leader. Like, when and how do you make sure as a leader that we're acting on day per day, a week after, month after, on what we said? And here, most often, there's two blockers. One is that when we want to do something and act on a change, it's complex. Often it's complex, and it can need more skills or more courage. So, for instance, we want to be seen as a peer towards the business and act and have more kind of influence on the business. But that's hard, right? Because we said it, everyone wants it, and the leadership supports that. But day after day, the recruiter is in the review with his hiring manager, and if the hiring manager is a bully, that's a kind of hard thing. And making that accountable, and so that's the first thing of the complexity. And the second, I would say, is like making sure that people, have the opportunity to do it, regardless of what the pace of the business can be. For instance, another example would be, if we say that user first is really important and candidate experience is really important, the next day, if we see something that a candidate that needs a feedback, etc., we need to say something. And if the team doesn't trust each other, that can be, because we haven't talked about it, because once you have the same set of values you want to go, sometimes you just don't do it because you didn't do the job of making sure everyone trusts each other with the team and they know each other, they bond. And we say culture, team, the team word in the culture side is really important, I'd say.
That's actually a really interesting angle of thinking about, like, the interpersonal relationships between the team members is something that we need to kind of engineer. We need to make sure that's a very, very strong group, because that's going to help the team basically fill in the gaps when, given the style of work recruitment is, it's not always possible for one person to do everything that they should do in the course of a day. Because you get interrupted all the time. There's things occurring. There's an emergency you need to take care of that takes you away from this project that's also super urgent. There's going to be things dropped. That's when the strength of the interpersonal relationships between other team members can really step in and support what's going on there. Okay, cool. Folks, we always do this in the middle of every show. I know it's coming to the end of the show, but we've got to do it anyway because it's very, very important. So just a quick break. Reason why we do this is because Brainfood Live has to come off air, and it should never be a place that the conversation needs to stop. So I want everyone to take a minute. Michael already knows how to do it. Stick your LinkedIn profile into the chat stream or the comment thread on LinkedIn now, and make sure you connect with everyone else who's also putting in their LinkedIn profile links. The reason why we want to do this, folks, is because everyone who's watching this right now is obviously interested in this conversation. Therefore, wouldn't it be great if you could walk away from this chat with 20, 30, 40, 50 people that also are passionate about this topic of cultural change in a TA team? Then go ahead and have that conversation offline, wherever you want, however you want. Make sure you walk away with a strengthened network as a result of this conversation. Okay, cool. Accountability. How do we make sure we have a team member and we think that this person is kind of trying to get away with not delivering on commitments somewhat? So how do we, when do we know when to give up on this person? How do we increase the fair pressure to make sure this person turns it around? Is there a technique, a management technique you can talk about where maybe you've had experience of turning around what you thought was previously a lost cause, or are they genuinely a lost cause? How do we do that? Thoughts on this? Adam, let's go to you. You've been a manager a long time. Ever had this experience?
Yeah. I mean, if the person's a lost cause, you fire them.
Yeah, I'm trying to not do that. So I'm trying to, like, how do we get, well, I already said, look,
okay. If you're trying not to do that, I don't know why you'd be trying not to do that, but if you're trying not to do that, you move them into a role where they are a individual contributor or an internal consultant or something like that, where they're not managing anybody else and they are not, collaborating as much.
So, okay, that's actually a fair, like repositioning someone is actually a fair way to try the next step. So rather than go to DEFCON 5, you think, okay, we take this person, we repurpose them in some way where, perhaps some of their more negative behaviors are going to be mitigated because they're not sort of in this scenario where they're so high in demand. I've seen this before in the sense that you have certain people that are mavericks, they want to walk to their own sort of beat. Sometimes they're also quite effective, which individually, but they're terrible in team. And you think, okay, I need to figure out a way where I can make the use of this person, but not have them disrupt or disrespect what everyone else is doing. And it may well be you've got to reposition them.
I can't think of very many examples of that, but what I do of where that would be the scenario, but I do go to Colin's comment on the chat there, which was competitive teams can be as effective or something like that as collaborative teams. That was something like that, the words he used. And, that makes me think of sales teams, of course. It makes me think of recruitment agency teams where, people are often driven by blinkers on behaviors, which is it's all about what I need to achieve. And I don't give a shit about what anybody else needs to achieve. They are in the right job for them. They're in an individual job where, their desk is their business, and all that kind of thing. So, but I can't think of very many examples where you keep somebody who was just a twat.
No, but I think it's the sales example is exactly one of the reasons where that would occur. Because if you're running a sales team, you've got one amazing biller, and you think, all right, my target is based on group target and this person is 50% of that, you're not going to get rid. So I totally understand how that works, but this is the different mechanic between internal TA where probably we're not individually targeted in this way. But taking your point, Colin, I think sometimes having a competitive edge within team can create an urgency of delivery, which is useful. Sometimes that's a useful thing, particularly if you're striving very hard for something.
The other area might be in tech type teams or STEM type areas where the person is quite objectionable, but they've got amazing skills. And what you would do in that scenario is put them into some sort of innovation program or something like that, where they just sit and try and make things and break things and do stuff like that and come up with things. And they don't really need to do a lot of, collaboration. But there's not a lot of other examples.
Yeah, actually, the tech example is exactly what I was thinking. I remember a good friend of mine who is a maverick, but a terrible team player. Like it's too high maintenance, It's like, okay, you're brilliant, you go and do that stuff, but you got to just mitigate how much interaction they have with everyone else, because everyone else is more systemic and they just want to get on with the process. Anyway, okay, let's talk about this. We're coming to the end of this. Give us one tip, everybody, that you would give, a hard lesson that you've learned in your journey as a leader or as an observer, as a consultant of cultural change, where you can say, you know what, this is actually quite important. It's not obvious, but this is the thing I would do again if I was ever in charge of a team that needed to have cultural change. Like one bit of advice you can give to the people watching this. John, you want to kick us off with this?
Yeah. I'd say don't assume that bringing people from the external world is always the right one.
Yeah, maybe they exacerbate an existing problem. If the problem is structural, swapping people in, like you may have actually got rid of a person that was a perfectly decent employee, and then you only realize that was the case when you've just hired the person you thought would solve it, but they end up replicating those behaviors. Okay, Nims, how about you? Give one bit of advice for us.
Be really explicit with what you mean about your expectations, about accountability, and get your team to be really explicit, because when you are, there's no way to hide. Yeah.
We don't want to have to read between the lines. There's already too much of that, isn't there? Say the thing, basically. Yeah. It's actually a classic form of writing. Like a lot of times when you write or read an email, if you're trying to interpret what the manager means, like what is the ask? Be very, very clear what the damn ask is. Otherwise, you're just asking people to put all of this thought into what this opaque meaning is. And guess what? They're going to attach their own meanings to it in some way that is going to be different from what you expected. Rassam, this is actually very pertinent for you because you're about to enter a new job. So I guess you need to be thinking about this. Like, what are the things in your mind as you go into this new thing? Like, okay, if you do need to change things a little bit, what's the one thing you're going to keep in your mind as you go ahead and take the first step?
Well, in my moment, a lot of people have been giving me advice, saying like, don't come as a Superman. Don't want the timing is really important. Don't think that you have to change everything really quickly, and especially don't lose confidence in yourself, because you have been really good in being innovative, doing kind of great stuff, etc. And you can come in a context where it doesn't work, and you say, "Okay, I'm the problem. My magic isn't working anymore," etc. And so taking the time, that is like personally. But what I really thought was useful in the past years for me, and I'm really getting back to this idea of trust within the team. Every time I had a problem, it was linked to personal elements of trust within the team members, because most of the TA cultural changes are ethic or kind of trends that everyone agrees on. Like, no one's going to say, I don't want a more diverse team. I don't want to have more influence on the business. I don't want to use better tools. Everyone more or less, let's say, the majority of recruiters accept that. And then it blocks either on complexity, and then you have to work them with the complexity and make it more simple, or it doesn't work because the team members don't trust each other. And that's where it was the most useful, and I had the best moments, let's say, as a leader, is getting in room with people, understanding how you can eventually arrive at a moment when you know that you can give brutal feedback to someone, and 100% that they are going to receive it purely and not going to say, oh, he's going and be toxic about it. And if you get to that point, most of the challenges can be done.
That's actually a really important point. The quality of the relationship, and this is true for any relationship, I would say, is how receptive people might be to honest and tough feedback. Because if you're able to take that, if you have the relationship where you're confident that that's not destructive to the relationship, then both of you can share information that is important for improvement without fearing that the relationship will be jeopardized or there'll be consequences for this. And this, I think, is one of the toughest parts of management, especially in experienced managers, where they feel that they fear the consequences of sometimes saying the tough truth, because they're worried about, okay, is this going to lead to a problem person, or is this going to lead to political issues down the line? But the ability to do that, absolutely, Jonathan, it is about radical candor, but it's about, in order for radical candor to exist, the trust relationship needs to be built somehow. Maybe that's a topic for another Brainfood Live. How do we build trust, particularly if we're now in a more distributed team? Because I think that's actually tougher. Back in the day when everyone was locked in, we're just spending so much time together, inevitably trust will occur simply because the amount of time we're in each other's presence. Now it's going to be a lot more diffused. How do we build trust in a remote environment? That could be another topic for Brainfood Live. Let me know, folks, if you're interested in that topic in the comments below. Adam, I hate to leave you with the final word, but seems that seems to be the case as your last person to speak. Give us one tip for managing cultural change that you know that you've learned from your kind of journey as a manager and a leader.
Well, it's not hugely dissimilar to Nims, but like constant communication, ongoing communication. When you learn something new as a leader, make sure everybody else that needs to know about it, they know about it as well. Because like you don't want days to go past and then they find something out from somebody else. So just like ongoing transparency and communication.
Yeah, really, really good point. And we're going to be talking about this actually in a couple more weeks. There's another, I haven't published a new Brainfood Live for September. That'll be out today, hopefully, if we've got the time this afternoon. But one of the things we're going to be talking about is how to handle layoffs. Because we've seen a lot of that going on. We've seen a lot of people being lambasted online for, the crying CEO meme that we've seen. We've seen sort of people say, oh my God, I can't believe they did it by email. The guy on Zoom who did the mass Zoom call. And then it occurred to me, you know what? Is there a good way to do it? Because it's a tough situation, and almost whatever you do, you might be then backwashed with some kind of criticism. And is it even possible at times to do the overly humane thing, which is one-to-one meetings with everybody? Because what if things get leaked? And as you say, Adam, people don't hear it from you. They hear it from someone else who basically had the information earlier. So we'll definitely have to do that Brainfood Live as well in the future. Okay, that's it, folks. We're out of time. So let me just thank our amazing guests. Nims, Dhawan, great to see you. Hope you have a very good weekend. We'll definitely bring you back for more cultural-related Brainfood Live. I think you've got a great contribution to make. John, great to see you again, sir. Again, I might have to talk to you about like recruiting at high volume at some point also. So I'll ping you a message if you're coming back. And Rassam, great to have you on the show, sir. Congratulations on the new job. Do let us know when the information is public. We'll look forward to seeing your next step on that journey, sir.
I think Rassam's got somebody at home who's been hanging about waiting for a lift, by the way. I think.
Really? Oh,
Dad, quickly take me to the party. Dad, quickly take me to the piscine. Something like that.
I think that's true, Rassam. You got to go. You got to go. take care of more important
As
business.
usual. Thank you very much.
That's cool. I think you're right. We might have got Rassam into trouble there. Anyway, that was a really interesting show. The only frustration for me is that obviously we had another several hours to talk about this, but we don't, so we have to come off air. Anyway, folks, that's it. Thanks for watching. We're back next week. Next week on Friday, what are we talking about? We're talking about how to create a recruitment content engine. Adam, I think you'd be interested in this because you think you know everything about content engines. We've got some great LinkedIn content people. We've got some other people that work in recruitment that understand how to basically make content easier, because I know a lot of us are sitting there thinking, oh, I wish I could blog, I wish I could do this. We never do it because it's such a amount of work. Well, guess what? There's a few tricks that can make you kind of produce content really quickly. That's going to be on the show next week. Make sure you sign up. Okay, that's it. Adam, that was all right. What did you say?
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. Really enjoyed it.
Good one. Again, I think we just need more time. Increasingly, I think we need to split the review away from the panel.
Ivan's idea was not a bad one, actually.
Do you know we should do that? I mean, it's extra work for us, though. I don't know whether you've got the capacity to do it. But yeah, maybe we do a review show separate to Brainfood Live. We do it midweek or something. In fact, why don't we actually ask the audience, what do you reckon? Should we split the review away from the panel and then, be able to have more space to have the discussion on both? Because I think they're both a bit constrained now, aren't they? Where actually they're both worth an hour, because we could easily talk about those topics. All right, let me think about how to do that.
Pull them on your Facebook group.
Yeah, I'll pull them somewhere. Maybe I'll ping out an email on something and then get that figured out. Anyway, big fight this weekend. Who you got?
AJ in the 10th.
You think he's going to do it? He's got no chance, man.
I saw the weigh-in earlier. No, he does have a chance. He's a incredible puncher. He is a hard puncher. There's only probably one person that's a harder puncher than him, and that's Wilder.
Yeah, but the point is, his punches are so slow that they're never going to find a small guy like.
No, I don't think they're slow. And also, Usyk's about 5-6 pounds heavier. He's the heaviest he's ever been. Yeah, he might have lost some pace.
Maybe, but I think as you get, no one gets lighter as a heavy. So I think that's a natural progression in terms of the way I see it is. I think AJ, his mind's not in it, mate. So I think he's out of there round 6. He gets knocked out. Oh, technical.
No way! He does not get knocked out round 6. If I
Andy
reckon
Louis style, he basically
and
then the ref comes in, stops it.
No, his mindset is sharp now. Absolutely, I've been watching loads of videos with him. He either wins it with a KO by the 10th, or if he hasn't done it by the 10th, he has gassed out and he might get KO'd.
Anyway, it's going to be a great fight, and good luck to both the guys there. All right, Adam, listen, enjoy Glasgow, mate. It's still sunny.
See ya.
Yep, I'll see you next week.
Enjoy.
Mate.
All the best.